where we get most of our revenue. You can see that over half of our general fund revenues come from the sales tax, the retail sales tax. Close to 20% comes from the business and occupation tax, which is, well, we won't go into that. If you're a business person, you know what it is. And about 10% of the state revenues come from property tax. About 75% of the property taxes that we pay stay within our local communities and fund cities and counties and school districts, libraries and whatnot, parks. But 10% goes to the state and then gets redistributed to help pay for public schools. But as you can see, sales tax making up over half of our state budget, even the percentage of sales in our state that are subject to sales tax just since 1990 has shrunk substantially. There has been a long-term shift from the 1940s on in consumer spending away from goods that are generally taxed. So when you go to the Bartels or the drugstore, a lot of what you buy is taxed there, not the grocery store. But if you go to the doctor, if you go to the beauty salon, services aren't generally taxed unless they're car repair services. So the percentage of sales subject to tax has been in a long-term decline. But you can see just since 1990 there's been a really substantial decline in the percentage of sales subject to tax. That means, so this is partly why this is a huge part of why the tax base is shrinking compared to our overall economy. As our economy grows, what we tax is staying static and isn't applying to that larger part of the economy. Now, most other states are doing better. Washington is one of only 7 states that does not have a state income tax. And income is something that does grow with the economy. So on average across the states get a little over a third of their total revenue from the income tax. Of course, Washington gets none from the income tax. We get substantially more from general sales tax than do most states. In this, you can see property tax looks really high here, but if you look at our total property tax, combining state and local property tax, we're actually a little lower than the national average among states for property tax. But as I said, about a quarter of our property taxes goes to the state and then gets redistributed for education. In most states, almost all of property tax stays right there in the local community. They don't have that redistribution across the state for property tax. So even though our property tax is just below average here, it looks high, but that's a little bit.
What's selective sales?
That's gas tax, cigarette tax, alcohol tax, that kind of thing. Washington also has the most regressive tax structure of any in the country. That means that in our state, the lowest income people pay the highest percentage of their income in state and local taxes, and the wealthiest pay the lowest percentage of their income in state and local taxes. Most states have a kind of regressive system. The federal system is pretty progressive because we have a progressive income tax at the federal level. Delaware, of all the states, has the flattest system. You can see theirs is pretty much flat at all income levels. People are paying pretty close to the same. Idaho actually has a pretty good tax structure, but theirs is still a little regressive. You can see California and then the U.S. average. But ours is pretty bad, and it's especially given the number and the amount of wealth of our wealthy people that we have here in our state. We're leaving a lot of revenue on the table by taxing the wealthiest people at such a low percentage of their income relative to other states. And then we're also making life very difficult, not only for the lowest income, but even you can see that middle fifth of the population is paying higher than in most other states. So when you think about all of the Tim Eyman initiatives and the various tax cutting initiatives that we've had over the last 15 years, well, there's actually some good reasons for that. Because, in fact, there's a pretty high percentage of people here in our state who really are paying a little too much, and there's also a substantial number of people who really aren't paying quite enough. Well, as a consequence, if you look at the percentage of total personal income in the state, that gets collected in state tax revenue. As you can see, in the 1990s, it was about 7.5% of total personal income in the state was being collected in state revenue through the various means that we have to collect that. It's gone down to just over 6% now since 2000. So that's a pretty significant drop in the amount of revenue that we're being able to collect, which means that there's a lot less revenue that we have to be able to give to public schools in it. Well, if we go back to that slide of sales subject to sales tax, for example, you can see a lot of our state revenue comes from sales tax. And people are spending money, but they're spending it on things that aren't taxed, where we're not getting.
It's not because laws have been changed.
It's not because
what we tax and what we don't tax.
It's partly due to our structure, and it's also partly due to things like the card tax initiative that passed. That was close to $1 billion a year. It would be about $1 billion in revenue today, a year. So that's also a substantial amount of money that the $1.8 billion that got cut from K-12 education in this biennium, the card tax alone would have, if we still had that, would have paid for that. And we've also limited property. I'll get to that. We've had several property tax limiting initiatives, so that's now.
What is this, a vehicle segment that will change?
The vehicle tax, that was one of the few progressive taxes that we, or at least it was based on the value of your vehicle. So actually what happened was it went to a flat, if you owned your really, yes, exactly. So what happened with that was people who owned really inexpensive cars, when it went to a flat $30, some people got their tabs raised. The people with the least expensive cars actually saw an increase in their car tax, and the people with the Humvees and the Beamers and whatnot had huge reductions.
Right.
Oh, yeah, one chart had subject to sales tax. Has there been more than one since then?
I assume so, yes. I'm sure there has been. And that's for all sorts of reasons. Of course, one of the services that people are now spending money on that isn't taxed, and I would argue should not be taxed, is healthcare. Healthcare is consuming larger and larger percentages of individual family budgets, as well as business budgets, and the state budget, and certainly the state and school district budgets.
Does the health bill get taxed B&O? I mean, like your Valley Children's Clinic, do they get charged B&O?
Some, it depends. Some pay, tax. There have been a lot of tax exemptions. A lot of the nonprofits tend to don't have to pay B&O, and there have been some extensions of B&O exemptions to additional health facilities as well. So it depends on if it's a for-profit or not-for-profit group. B&O tax as a service rate is about it's 1.5% for the service rate, so it's way lower than the 6.5% that the state collects in sales tax. So sales tax here in King County we're paying 9.5% now for sales tax. The state level across the state is 6.5% that goes to the state, and then city, county, governments, transit agencies can also add on. So King County is now 9.5, and most parts of the state are around 8.5% sales tax. So at the same time that we have this problem of not necessarily falling revenues, this year we're having we actually have falling revenues this biennium. That's really atypical to have falling revenues. It's because there's been this just collapse of consumer spending, including nobody's bought a new car for how long right now. And we were also getting close to 6% we were getting in retail real estate transaction taxes. So the fact that nobody can buy houses anymore, sell or buy a house, has also